Once Upon a Time in America, the final film directed by Sergio Leone, starring Robert De Niro and James Woods. It's an epic crime drama spanning decades in the lives of the characters and hours of actual screen time. And that's something that I do want to start with, the runtime, which is 3 hours and 15 minutes. That's almost twice the usual length of a feature film, and the original cut was actually even longer. Leone planned to have it released as two 3-hour movies. The studio insisted on making it a single feature, so Leone edited it down to the still whopping 3 hours 50 minutes. But unfortunately, the American distributors were still not pleased with it and released a gutted version that was just about 2.5 hours long. According to the people that saw it at the time of its release, this version was unintelligible and nonsensical. Not only did it cut crucial sequences necessary to understanding the plot, it also re-edited the film to a linear narrative structure of having, instead of having back and forth flashbacks as it is in the director's cut. The result was catastrophic. The movie was critically panned in the US and received no recognition at the Oscars that year, which, if you watch the correct director's cut, makes no sense at all, especially ignoring Ennio Morricone's score. However, the film was later re-released in its original version, and this time around the critics rightfully appreciated it, and to this day it stands as one of the cinema classics. The story focuses on Robert De Niro's character Noodles, a Jewish American gangster who returns to New York in 1968 after a 35-year absence. Through flashbacks, where he looks back upon his life journey, we get the backstory of who he was, divided into two main sections. One taking place in 1920, introducing us to Noodles' childhood, neighborhood, and friends, as well as his first contact with organized crime. And the second one in the early 1930s, showing us the adult Noodles as an established gangster and explaining what led to his eventual departure from New York. In many ways, this film is similar to the usual works of Scorsese, mainly because we have De Niro in a crime epic, and actually the closest companion piece would be the most recent one of them, The Irishman. Like there, we get to see the life of a criminal from the perspective of years, looking back on it with experience and more than just a little regret and sadness. However, Once Upon a Time in America and Irishman are still two vastly different pictures, and I have to say the key difference is the feel of both movies, which has to do with the different sensibilities of their directors. Martin Scorsese has a distinct style. His crime movies run at a certain pace. They have this lively rhythm to them, whereas I got the feeling that Leone is more patient, more calm and introspective, somehow a bit more romantic and nostalgic at the same time. If I was to use an analogy, I'd say Scorsese is like a rock song, whereas Leone a piece of classical music. They're both great in their own rights, but they are certainly different beasts. The comparison to music, I think, is all the more accurate if you look at the scores that the directors tend to prefer. Scorsese tends to use rock and roll quite a bit in his crime films. Leone typically works with his longtime collaborator Ennio Morricone, and this film is no different. The score is almost like a separate character here because it is so distinct and recognizable and just fitting in every way. It perfectly sets the tone for and captures the tone for the movie and captures the exact emotions that the director wanted us to feel through every scene. I think you can make a solid argument actually that this is the best score that Morricone has ever written, and yes, I am including the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think the two main pieces especially, the main theme and Deborah's theme, are pretty much perfect. Come to think of it, I actually have a story related to the music from this film. 2 or 3 years back, I had the great privilege of seeing Ennio Morricone live in concert. I went alone, and when I got to my seat, there was an elderly lady sitting right next to me. She was very obviously alone too, and on the one hand, she looked like a total dame. A beautiful dress, made-up hair, earrings. It was clearly a big night out for her. But she also looked quite timid and maybe a bit distressed, maybe a bit scared, as if the scale of the arena and the amount of people around her made her slightly uneasy. So the concert starts and the orchestra plays a couple of tunes, and the lady, slowly relaxes. The tension goes away somewhere. She's slowly going into the world of music, and then eventually Deborah's theme from Once Upon a Time in America starts playing. And within seconds, this lady just transforms. She does this little shake of excitement, and her face lights up, and she's just delighted to be hearing this, and more than a little touched. It was as if the first sounds of that music stirred some deep memories for her. Whether it was the film itself or something more personal, I don't know. I would assume the latter. But it was just something else to see the effect that this music had on her. It's like years have been lifted off her shoulders, and she just sat there with this youthful joy and wonder and excitement on her face. And to this day, it is one of my most cherished music related memories to be able to see how much of an effect a single piece can have on a person, even in such an old age. Or maybe it was because of the old age, who knows. So, inferring from the story, you can probably guess I loved the score very much. Going back to the film itself, though, I have to say I quite enjoyed it as well. I think, in terms of atmosphere and acting and developing its themes, it is deservedly considered to be one of the classic must see movies. The permeating sense of loss, regret, nostalgia for the days long gone, lost hopes of what might have been, the sense of futility that the ultimate outcome of the life of crime brought to De Niro's character, and actually most of the other people involved. The whole central conflict between his life of crime and his friendships, and the character of Deborah, who represents everything good in his life, everything good but also unattainable. It's deeply, deeply melancholic, but I felt it never gets cheap in its melancholy. It feels honest throughout. Final point, the production design is incredible. From the clothes to the outdoor sets and interiors and vehicles, it is almost like watching a history book come to life in a lot of ways. I have been thinking for the past day or so, which one is better then, The Irishman or Once Upon a Time in America, just going back to this comparison. If I really had to choose, I would say Leone is the winner here over Scorsese, but I'm very happy both movies exist, because each of them approaches similar subjects in a different way, and I wouldn't want to be rid of neither of those experiences.